action learning is a process that involves a small team, and we sometimes call that team a set. And that team is working on real problems. They're taking action and learning while doing so. And what we say, there are 5 solution spheres from action learning. So we can use action learning for leadership development. We can use action learning to build a learning organization. We can also use action learning to build high-performing teams. But most often, we use it for breakthrough problem solving. And of course, we use action learning for certifying action learning coaches. Here is a process that's so elegant in its simplicity, and it addresses those 2 concerns that I have, the whole implementation issue, as well as bringing, all the best ideas to the table. With action learning, we have 6 key components that must be present for it to work. So you must have a small team, and the team shouldn't be more than 8 so that you don't have the formation of cliques. You have to have a real problem to work on, and someone must have responsibility and authority for taking action on the particular problem. And so the main ground rule that really sets the tone is that statements can only be made in response to a question. So no one can start speaking in the group unless they are answering a question or asking a question.
Yes.
So what it does, it forces you as a member of the team to listen very carefully, because the only way you can answer the question asked is for you to have listened. As you know, in many of our traditional meetings and problem-solving groups, all the experts are waiting for their turn to speak. So everyone is speaking and no one is listening.
Right.
And we say in action learning that statements usually from a leader generates 3 things. Either the people come to depend on you for answers, or they rise in defiance, probably silently, or you get defensiveness.
Yes.
Whereas if you ask questions that make people reflect, they're more likely to learn and change their behavior. So when we sit as an action learning group working on a real problem, what's happening would be questions. Now, a key feature of the WIAL action learning is an experienced and certified coach, because the coach ensures that learning happens at the 3 levels, so that the group you're working with gets smarter.
Yes.
They also are, the individual members are working on leadership skills during the session, so they are individually learning, and they take back the learning to their organization. So you have those 3 levels of learning. So action learning can be very exciting, especially that we have diverse group.
Yes.
And that, I find, is one of the challenges that people have, in the sense that they often, and well, when we most likely will get to that later, but people at the onset start querying the composition of the group. So, for example, if we're dealing with a problem in economics and the problem owner is an economist, they can't understand why we have people sitting in the room who are not economists and, who, in their view, couldn't possibly help them with it. But the beauty of action learning is that you don't need experts, subject matter experts. What you need, people who are bold enough to ask the questions.
Yes.
Ask the questions that will provoke reflection and get the problem owner to arrive at some breakthrough thinking. I knew what I wanted to call the book, but I didn't quite get the revitalizing until, after looking at all what I had captured. I strongly believe that our ancestors sacrificed very heavily, and they innovated in order to create wings for us.
Yes.
But today, in my humble opinion, I think we are walking. Instead of using those wings to get to the heights that our ancestors dreamt for us, we have folded these wings and we're walking. The image I want you to have in mind, can you imagine all the beautiful birds of the Caribbean choosing to walk, in spite of the fact that they can fly? You see how ridiculous that sounds?
Yes.
So can you imagine that I'm thinking that as Caribbean people, we are now walking, although we have wings that could allow us to fly. And if you go through our history, you will realize very quickly the number of very tough odds that our people have overcome in the past. But somehow that fighting spirit, that strong belief that we can be an indomitable force for good, on the global scene, somehow that's lacking. Now, don't get me wrong, I admit that there are pockets of excellence across the Caribbean. But that unity of purpose and that winning spirit, I think, is lacking. I firmly believe that now is the time that we can reawaken our drive as a people and connect diverse minds across the region and get winning solutions for all problems and problems on the global stage. So from my experience with action learning, I am very confident that if we use it appropriately and widely, this could just be the catalyst to revitalize the Caribbean. The key areas that come up a lot is the whole business of consultative decision making. In many of the cases, what we find is that the person who is in the development program, they suddenly come to the realization that the answers don't necessarily have to come only from their head, that they can consult with others, they can bring others to the table, they can tolerate questions. Because one of the main challenges I found, even working with the LDP candidates, is that
the leadership development
program or CLP,
yes.
right. I found that initially a lot of the senior professionals in the public sector in the Caribbean, and maybe that happens elsewhere too, somehow there's an inverse relationship with their rise on the success ladder and their tolerance for being questioned. So it seems as if the higher up you are, the less tolerant you are of people asking you questioning what you're doing, and especially if the person is not of the rank that you figure should have the right to ask you questions, or they're not in the field that you're in. And unfortunately, you won't make much progress. You won't get breakthrough thinking if you're not faced with questions, that force you to reflect.
Yes.
So that is one of the, and so one of the major learnings was that people now are open. They're more open to, being questioned by others. And that we've used, so I've used that in at least 2 companies to help swing the culture from a hierarchical culture or one where certain people speak to certain people and certain levels shouldn't interact with other levels. So we open that all out, because then I use a diverse group. And at first it's uncomfortable because, a senior manager is sitting in a group owning a problem and an entry-level clerk is asking a question. Why did you do that? What other ways could you have done that? And at first, it ruffles the senior manager. But when they realize, hey, we are all subjected to those rules, then they start reflecting. And on many occasions, we found that that the questions that come from what we call the pizza man, the person who knows very little about the subject matter, or somebody from a different generation, that is the question that provokes the greatest learning, from the individual. So one of the I have about 4 examples in the book where I threw in a pizza man. So for example, we had some senior leaders in one country in an action learning program, and I threw in a recent graduate, one of the millennials, somebody born in 1991. And of course, the initial reaction is, what's this young man doing in here? He doesn't fit. And then by the end of the session, one of the companies represented hired this fellow without any interview. Because through action learning, they were able to get insights into his mind and his way of thinking. And there was a difference in how they started perceiving that generation. So in the over 20 cases that I cite in the book across 10 countries, it is clear to me that the process can be used for any problem in any industry, any type of organization in the industry. We've had issues where a leader brings a personal problem to the action learning group and went away with insights. One CEO, her problem was that she was overwhelmed because she had her successors had left the organization, her potential successors had left. She was there, overwhelmed, overburdened, and she just couldn't find. And I remember one participant had this question. After she was just insisting that she can't get, through, she just asked, let's say her name was Mary. He said, Mary, who died and made you God? And I was the coach at the time, and so I was like, you know, I was new in the business, and I said, okay, should I allow this? Okay, so this might make her uncomfortable, but you know, the principle of action learning, no question is not allowed. You know? So I turned to the guy and I said, you intend for her to answer seriously? He said, yes, seriously. And I said to the problem owner, you okay answering? She said, yes, but I need to reflect a bit. And would you believe for the entire week, that question stayed on this individual's mind and caused deep reflection. And she, through that simple question, was able to change, you know, her way of operating to be a bit more effective. So any problem, any organization, any industry. The second thing is, it is very clear that reframing the initial problem is very necessary most of the times, because what we perceive as a problem may be a symptom, it may be, you know, something that doesn't strike at the core. So it's very important to use up a lot of time up front, making sure that you have the right problem. So that's one of the things that comes through clearly in the book. And as I mentioned before, bringing all voices to the table.
Diverse voices.
Yes, bringing diverse voices to the table. And as part of that, in that chapter, I deal with the generational differences and how you can use action learning to build that mutual respect and make the presence of the 4 generations a wellspring of innovative, you know, breakthrough problem solving.